let the explosion continue here. Women's History Month is still rolling, and I'm here with Ericka. What's going on?
Hey, Richard. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm loving it. 1:30 in the afternoon here on the East Coast here. Time to sit down with you. And I just got to tell you, Women's History Month is so important to me. I mean, I'm going to just give a shout out. I do this all the time. Shout out to all the women leaders out there, especially yourself. I mean, you guys are leading the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you and our friends over at Advanced Partners for having a series just focused on women. It's awesome.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Advanced Partners are they're the best. You know what? They put the FUN, fun and funding. So, if you need funding, you need to call, right? There's our plug.
You've got a great commercial right there.
There it is. You know what? I might have to go with that, But I got to tell you, Ericka, your story is so inspiring from the beginning. So, I mean, I just don't want to waste any time. I just want to jump into it. So let's just talk about, how did you get into staffing?
Oh my gosh, like everyone else, by a happy accident, right? I was in retail. I was an English lit major in retail and loved my job. I worked at Bath and Body Works. I was like a regional
nice
branch manager, and I loved that I got to sell soap and smell good all day. And I had a really good friend. We were going to a concert together and we were chatting, and he's like, have you ever thought about recruiting? And I said, it's December. I said, yeah, I just hired 56 people for seasonal help in my store. I recruit all day. What are you talking about? And he said, I think you should have a conversation with Etain Group, then Tech Solutions. And the company was really small. There were probably fewer than 10 people in the business in late 99. And that's how it all began. I took a pay cut from retail, and I stayed through Christmas in the holiday season because I didn't want to leave anybody in the lurch. And so I started on January 11th, 1999. It was my first day as an IT staffing recruiter on the ground floor of a massive rocket ship. Working primarily with a bunch of boys who are some of my family, really. And I think they hired me because they knew I had brothers and I could hang with them. So that was the beginning. And I just fell in love with all aspects of having the opportunity to really come in, very entrepreneurial, scrappy, less than $1 million in revenue.
Ooh.
And be along, just part of the ride and driving lots of change over the years.
So were you nervous when you left Bath, Bath and Beyond or Bath and Body Works?
Were
you nervous at all when you did this jump?
No, not at all. I mean, I was actually really excited. It was the first time I was young. I was 25. I'd worked on my feet all day. So for me to have a job that I could go hang out with my friends on the weekend and not have to get up and go to work, it was great.
Especially, we know retail. What happens in retail? You're working all Black Friday, all the holidays.
And I worked full time while I was in college. That's like a fun fact. I don't really share that often, but I worked full time as a store manager in Williamsburg, Virginia, at a retail shop while I was in college. So yeah, I have lots of energy. So I was really ready to put it all into a desk job, right? It was just very different. I loved it.
So you're working with all these guys, and how long did you stay there? I mean, that was your first staffing gig.
I was at Etain for 20 years.
20 years.
20 years. Who does that, right? So that was just the very beginning, right? Recruiting. I really did every job except for back office and CFO throughout my journey there. Recruiting, selling, account managing, running branch, running recruiting and delivery. I didn't know it, but I built the first training program because really selfishly at the time, but because I was selling and no one could recruit. So I needed to help transfer what I knew to others. So I was doing business development and leading our first training class, like early days. And that really evolved into one of my favorite roles in the company, was leading the people department, really building it out, hiring, growing, servicing, recognizing, developing our internal staff. And we hired all inexperienced folks. It was all organic growth, I was there till 2018. Wow. We were about 165 million at the time when I decided to make a big leap into software.
That's amazing. Okay. So business development back in the day, please explain that to me. Dropping business cards off, driving like a road warrior. Is that what they called it back in the day?
Oh my gosh. I mean, very high touch in the IT staffing industry, heavy relationship based. My first client that I did any kind of sales for was actually in Columbia, South Carolina, which is like the warmest Southern hospitality place you can imagine.
Sweet tea everywhere, right?
Come on in. Yes. I mean, what a great place to cut my teeth and build confidence in my sales abilities, to have just an account to love on, just that love building relationship with me and letting me help solve problems around talent. And we just, built a long relationship over time. It was our first, largest account we ever had that I oversaw back in the day. But business development, I also, I'm in a banking town. I was in Charlotte. And so there's a lot of financial services companies and, a lot of smiling and dialing and experimenting and cold calling, warm calling, all of the things.
Putting the
Back
flyers.
then, people called it a Rolodex or a hot book.
Oh, the Rolodex. Remember that? You write numbers on and stuff like that. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, really, it's been super exciting. I remember the first job board. I'm sounding like a really old person right now.
No, I love this. I mean, is this like going back to the old school? And I think some ways, Ericka, we're going back that way for business development, even though we have the technology, we still got to have that human touch.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely an opportunity to meet your customer where they want to be met. And, I'm a really good example of this because when I'm shopping, I remember the day I got my first instant message pop up when I was online shopping and thinking, I don't want to chat with you. No way. But now we're all in this era where we can get everything delivered to our doorstep in 15 minutes or pick up your groceries. And, we've been able to do that for a long time and we embrace it now. So, it's really more about how do you make it easy to do business with you? And some customers want to see your face and some do not. They want to know that you know what they need and they can just send you a text.
That is too funny. So the transformation in the 20 years you were there, I mean, you've seen it went from one side to the other side. When did you really see the technology coming in, your 20 years? I mean, was it like 2010? You seen it really taken to the tech side or what?
You mean as far as technology serving the industry?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's a whole show, Richard. I would say probably 2003 was when we got our first ATS, and before that we used Outlook, which wasn't bad. We had partnered with Bullhorn from the early days, back when there was email in Bullhorn, and then we made a change in our ATS to eRecruit, and I think 2011. But when you think about integrated stack for technology and, really trying to solve unique problems for your customers with technology, for us, it started really early. We always were leaning into trying things, failing at things, changing your mind. When you're a growing company, you've got to be able to experiment and see what works. And ultimately, trying to make your producers and your team feel like they're focused on the things that are going to, give them value. Nobody wants to do data entry in a spreadsheet.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. So
Nobody wants to write it down in a hot book.
Remember them days?
Open a filing cabinet, right? So we were early adopters of all things technical. I mean, just.
You know what else is funny before we jump into it is MapQuest. Remember that? Trying to find businesses, everything was turn right, turn left.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. If you want to go back in time, I mean, I think we used to rotate holding a pager when we would go physically deliver paychecks because there was not direct deposit happening yet. So I'm definitely a dinosaur, Richard. Been there.
I love that. Oh, see, it's holy cow, paychecks back in the day. Everybody got a paycheck on a Friday, man.
Well, if you think about it, touching IT, I was focused on IT staffing. I think that's what hooked me, honestly, is all of our customers went from, when I joined in 99, everyone was worried that when the clock struck midnight, the millennium, that something crazy was going to happen because our computers weren't going to work because they're only 2 digits, right? Not 4. And so Y2K remediation and COBOL programming, there was no internet yet. Nobody was talking about, they were calling it the World Wide Web, right? And
that's right. AOL.
Developers, yes. So, and then what happened in over the 20 years, just watching tech in general, not staffing tech or tech catered to HR tech, just technology has been just advancing so quickly, and it's so exciting, right? There's always something to learn. I'm a learner. I fell in love with the industry. It's like, I'm curious about this thing. What is .NET? What's a Java bean? Let's go figure it out. Let's make it happen. So there's just so much to learn, and technology makes it all the more exciting.
Oh, it is. And right now, I mean, technology is just booming at us. So after 20 years, you did the 20 years there, and then you have the courage to just take off and you go into the next venture. So take us down that journey. After 20 years, I mean, it's for people to change that quick. 20 years, people usually just stay the whole time, So what made you take the leap to the next level?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think kind of going back to our celebration of women's history, I'll kind of maybe tell the story of that in that theme. I was raised by an amazing mom and a grandmother who lived with me when I was little. My parents are divorced, and my older brother and I would spend time on the weekends with our dad. My dad was like a CFO, an executive on a fast track, and I was watching my mom like really try to figure out how to be a stay-at-home mom, going to being the person in charge of her household, and also have the courage to, get out of a situation that, an unhappy marriage, right? With 2 young kids. She was really young. And so I was kind of raised by these really badass women, and my grandmother was one of 4 girls. So there's just a lot of this feminine energy in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a lot of trust for men. So I feel like that's an important part of my story, is any of our listeners might want to hear about why I titled my chapter in Together We Rise about choosing yourself. Because, I could have had like very little trust in men. I probably did when I joined Etain Group. And one of the things that was really pivotal is the men that I joined the team with, Brian, John Olin, Rob Eubank, Jeff Harris, they were really wonderful to me. They helped me create opportunity, unlock doors, push me to do things, and I was terrified of doing. I think when I was like 26, one of the founders gave me a book called Women Don't Ask. And I'm like, is he trying to tell me I should ask for more money, or like what?
Yeah.
He wanted a job share with me, Jeff Harris, before we even had kids, right? So just very much embracing me, and also just advancing women. There weren't many women in IT, and there definitely weren't many women servicing IT staffing like there are today. And definitely weren't women in leadership, in the sea around me. And I didn't even realize that I had a role to play in that. I kind of felt like I was one of the guys. I probably even dressed like them. I wore really high heels so I could be at everybody's level. I would crank my chair up in the meeting.
No way.
So that I could sit taller and kind of, hang. And I think that kind of comes from my upbringing. When on the weekends with my dad, I was the one doing powder puff BMX and riding my skateboard and swimming with the sharks in Florida on a boogie board. The shark, I had to get that in.
You did. Good job.
So, I had to, I was one of the guys. And I think that's such an important part of my journey, because I wasn't running from anything when I left Etain Group. And, it was so fun. It was a great ride. And when you know what great is, it's very difficult to settle than anything less. I had been, in some really, the journey at Etain was 20 years of just, it was amazing. There was obviously hard times, but we saw several recessions. We never declined in revenue. We were growing. We went, one of our partners, one of our founders, Rob Eubank, was our president in 2009. And I wrote about this in Together We Rise. In 2009, we were on a road trip, and I was pregnant, and I had to tell him, because I was like, I have to tell him. And he's telling me at the same time that I'm telling him this joyous news that I'm pregnant. He's telling me he's got like health issues, and it turned out to be colon cancer. And so, when you think about, and I bring this up not to make anybody bring out the Kleenex, but it causes you to reflect, right? So when Rob was, he threw a Super Bowl party for himself when he was dying, and a couple of weeks before he passed, so that everyone could say goodbye to him, right? It was kind of awesome. And it wasn't the last time I saw him, but I remember at this party, I asked him the question, Rob, do you have a number in mind that would make you proud? Right? He's the president of the business. touching the offices, it's like staffing, running around in the Southeast. And we're a growing company and we're having a blast. And he said 100 million. So everybody wants to be at 100 million. The time we finished just 2 weeks before we close out the books, and we were at 48 million in revenue. I will not forget it. And he thought, here's a dying man who's thinking that his biggest dream is to get to 100 million. Like, I don't even know if he thought we could ever do it. But he said, if so-and-so can do it, we can do it. And he didn't want to miss that. Like, he really wanted, like, put my picture on the wall. I want to be there for it. I know we can do it. And after he passed a few weeks later, we could have done things a lot of different ways. We could have been destroyed by that loss. It could have been detrimental to everything. It was obviously a very emotional time, and we all love Rob. His picture still hangs on the wall at Experis Manpower.
Love it.
And, in just a few years, it might have been even less than 3, we blew past that number, Richard. So when I talk about rocket ship and doing that explosion, to go from 48 million to 100 million, almost overnight, there's a lot of work that you do. Obviously, a lot of grit, grace, and team and great people, and a lot of, just a lot of great things, great customers. But when you have that experience walking side by side with someone who's battling cancer and, obviously living every moment intentionally, Rob would say this thing, and I love to share this with everyone because it's like a fun thing to think about when you're thinking you're having a bad day. He would say, I don't have time for negativity. And he really meant it. Like, I don't have time. If you take that word time, nobody does, right? So even if you wanted to think about complaining, like, you felt really stupid instantly, but it's really the perspective I bring. And that's one big lesson Rob taught me. And, when I think about having courage to, like, leave something and go do something else, I see, like, the glass is half full, not, oh, what if they fail? The other thing that Rob taught me, and everyone did, but Rob really, watching him and really learning from that experience is, he could have had time to do anything. Like, he had this limited amount of time. So you have to ask yourself, like, if it were you and this happened to you, what would you do with your time? Right? Yeah. It kind of puts things in perspective. And so if your time is limited, which we all do, but we don't think about.
We never think about it.
There's always tomorrow. We all think we're invincible, especially for those of us with young kids. So, if you really want to be intentional about living, what will you do differently? And so for me, that's really the theme of me starting to think about me being in the driver's seat of my career. Certainly I asked for opportunities. I was pushed into opportunities. I seized opportunities that people were like, hey, I think this needs to be done. Or I would say, oh, this needs to be done. Let's do it. And then my job title changes 2 years later. But for me, I had been with this business for 20 years. I built the place. I'd hired all these great people and I was having so much fun. But I also, felt like the team could take it to the next level without me, which was such a great feeling. And I was so curious about technology. I'd been supporting tech. I'd been a part of Girls in Tech. There are, it's bad that there are not many women in leadership in staffing. It's even worse in tech, right? Less than 15% of workforce is technologists. So there was like a little itch I needed to scratch, and I'd been supporting around it. And it really kind of pulled me into software and, moving to Colorado with my family and just kind of taking big leaps. And I didn't have fear. And I think I'll tell you just a quick story, because I can tell you Jeff Harris stories all day. He's like my work husband because we worked together for 20 years. And when he was CEO, I was chief operating officer for my last 4. And when I resigned, he and Brian, the 2 founders, they weren't mad. They said, we want to support you. Like, we get it.
I love that.
And not only did they say that, Jeff was an investor and on my board of advisors at Workin. So, not only did he just say, yeah, you're going to do great things, but he's like, you're going to do great things. I'm going to be all in. That's just one example of, like, early out of the gate. He was just like watching me spread my wings and letting me do the thing. But he's the guy that will say my name when I'm not in the room, or be like, oh, you should talk to Ericka Hyson about this thing. I just saw him this morning. So this is not like this. It was a great thing. So it wasn't like I was running from something. And I think for our listeners, getting really comfortable advocating for yourself and thinking about your own aspirations. What is it you want to do? What lights you up? And then what steps can you take to go get it? And what's holding you back? Like, what are you afraid of? Certainly had a lot of fun serving the industry. I was at Texas for a little while. I joined Workin as employee 5 in a startup and helped lead that business to over 700% growth and an exit. And just having a lot of fun, with great people and great technology. And I'm so grateful. And again, very male dominated, wonderful people in the industry. I have kind of a very special, I think it's unique about me that I've worked with amazing male allies. And I know there are more and more men want to be better allies. So it's important for me to speak about that, because after every conversation I have about Together We Rise, people will say, I love that you talked about the men. Can you help me with this situation? Or I'm dealing with this. It might be awkward. Or I just, I love men that want to embrace the awkward and get in there and really help and help pave the way in the path for more women to have a seat at the table. And Jeff literally created seats at the table for me. I remember sitting in a boardroom, it was all men, and I was trying to minimize myself and go sit at the kids' table because there was a lot of people.
Get out of here.
And Jeff looked at me and he pulled up a chair and he said, head of the table. He said, this is your meeting. Where are you going? This is your meeting. You're running it. And it was our new private equity partner. And, but I'll never forget that moment. I'm like, oh, I didn't know how important that was going to be for my whole career until now. I look back on it, that he literally created a seat. It wasn't that I was going to get kicked out of the room. I was just I was accommodating everybody else. It's actually a thing women do. We minimize, we shrink ourselves to make room for men.
I did not know that.
Jeff was like, no, he's a great, he's a girl dad, as were my other partners. And I think I've always been so fortunate to have wonderful male allies, and still do. So it's a big piece of why I felt confident to take the leap.
You know what I love, Ericka, is like most people that go into a male-dominated company might have some fear. It looks like you just went right in and just blended with them. I'm sure you talk baseball, football, because and all that good stuff. But did you have any fear at all? It seems like you just were like, I'm coming in like the lion or the tiger and taking charge.
And I didn't have any fear of working with men. That wasn't the fear. I certainly had fears. There was always things that were terrifying. If you're not doing something every day that's a little bit scary, then you're not growing. So I look for fear a little bit, like, let's do a hard thing. And I think it's important for people in the staffing industry, like especially if you're not at 100 million yet. Typically companies aren't really that sophisticated. They may not have a lot of programs for your development. At least I didn't. No one was teaching me intentionally, like, let's put a development plan together. We put those in place later, but you have to take responsibility for your own development, right? So how do you do that? You have to advocate for yourself. You have to think about, what job do I want to do? And what things do I do well now that I can keep doing? How do I learn some new stuff that'll get me ready for that next job? And then who can I develop under me so that when I go ask for the full-time, I want to go do this other thing, I haven't become so indispensable, right? Like, I've already built my own successor, so it's a no-brainer, right? You just develop and keep bringing other people with you. And if you're doing that in a small company, there's plenty of opportunity. Sometimes people just wait to be tapped on the shoulder for something. And I just never had to do it. There was not like ever a big ask. Just go do it. I would beg for forgiveness later if I messed it up, but I had permission. But that was part of our culture, Richard. We never lost that entrepreneurial edge of run your desk like it's your business, make great business decisions, up to X amount of dollars, of course. But, it's like do great things for your customers, have fun, it's staffing.
You know what? It seems like in 20 years, we're like fun. It's almost like you guys should be like the blueprint of what staffing and companies should be like, because at the end of the day, it seems like you guys had a blast for 20 years and you grew together as a team.
Yeah, we did. We had a lot of fun. We still do. I mean, it's like, this is a fun industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's been a hard time for a lot of companies, but there are a lot of companies growing and there's a lot of companies gaining edge right now. And, it's all about figuring out what your edge is going to be and how you're going to harness that. And usually it comes down to the people that you have on your team.
Exactly. Okay. So after all that good stuff, then you went to working and then you went to a couple other places and then you started your own. So like, give us that little timeline there.
Yeah. Well, so I guess what makes me a little different from most folks that kind of grew up in the staffing industry in one company or 5 companies is I pivoted from Etain Group to go service the industry at Text Desk working. And then I worked with my friend Leslie Vickery at Clear Edge Marketing. And really, the common denominator there is, servicing an industry to gain that competitive advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at texting back in 2018, texting was not a commodity. Texting was like, everyone was terrified. It was too personal. It's too this. Now it's, everybody texts about everything. And it's necessary. It's like it's like having a phone, right? You need to be able to text your customers. But at the time it was like kind of edgy. Certainly mobile technology, that was white space. You were doing it when you were at TrueBlue, but the staffing industry at large didn't know what a platform was. They didn't know that mobile technology could bring them closer to their customers in a new, faster, more productive way. So super exciting, right? And I feel like I've gotten a PhD in like all things generally about lots of different staffing companies because I've touched all the industries, right? Global pandemic hit in 2020, the same year I joined Workin, and we helped a lot of companies in healthcare staffing, commercial staffing. So I got to really broaden my experience outside of just the professional staffing space and got to meet a lot of fun people, both on the tech side, because we integrated, we had lots of great partners, made a lot of friends, got really involved with the ASA's Women's Leadership Council.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I have to say, I got some save the dates, don't let me forget for the end, because we've got some cool stuff coming up. But, just really connecting the dots and learning. And that's the whole reason I was kind of having the itch to leave Etain Group, is I'm a learner. And I was like, all right, I'm 45 at the time. What's next? I'm ready for something new. And, just love the challenge. So about 1.5 years ago, I started my own business, Another Leap of Faith. And I spend my time now coaching. So you mentioned the blueprint of what you did. I would not say that what we did at Etain is exactly what everybody should do, but I do apply all of my learnings of both Etain and then servicing the industry from a marketing growth engine, technology, to really help CEOs with their growth strategy and execution to make sure they are, help them grow, right? I like working with CEOs or owners that are excited about growth. They want to be on a rocket ship. They're on a rocket ship. Maybe they're a little bit stalled, but they really value the perspective of someone that's been there. I've also worked at a tiny company recently, so I understand what it's like to be employee 5, where you're taking out the trash, not just big company experience.
Okay, so how did a tiny company go? How did that go?
But it's a blast. When you get sometimes I almost think it's easier, Richard, when you get to hire the whole team than inheriting a team that you have to clean house and start over. So they all come with, different. It's very different. And I often think if I knew then what I know now, or if I were to start a staffing company today, what would I do differently? Because I have so much different knowledge and perspective, and you have to just constantly be learning.
It is. It's some years of maturity. My grandpa said it always. When you're 72, you're like a PhD in life. It's over the years. You learn stuff, the mistakes, and how to grow.
Well, it's funny. When I was contemplating starting my own business, I reached out to Sue Burnett. I don't know if you know Sue, but Sue is one of the co-authors of Together We Rise. And
Mm-hmm.
she just celebrated last year her 50th anniversary of Burnett Specialists.
50.
And
Wow.
we lovingly call her the OG.
That is the OG. 50
Yeah.
years.
And she had written her book about, in her chapter of Together We Rise, it's about risk taking. And she writes about how when she started her business and she was young and how risky it was and how she just did it. And, wow, she's amazing. So I called her. I said, Sue, I'm thinking about starting my own business. Like in my head, I kind of thought I might do this like when I was retiring, but I'm not retiring. I'm like, if anything, I have more energy than ever.
Heck yeah.
And you know what she said? She said, Ericka, well, if you don't just do it now, you'll never know. And that's all I needed to hear.
That was it.
Okay. This was a dumb, why did I didn't, it was just, she just put it in perspective for me. It was so simple. It's like, you know what? You're right. Why wouldn't I? Why not go? Why not go for it? She's like, if you don't like it, you pivot. I'm like, okay. So, yes, those who are more experienced and wiser can sometimes just boil the ocean for you that much faster. I could have spent 3 months ruminating on whether I should do this thing. And it was just like, okay. Sue
bounce it off your husband, everybody else, and you're like, okay, I'll just ask the OG.
Sue said it so. Yeah, I mean, it's so great to have friends like Sue.
I love it.
Yeah.
So how do you balance the work-life balance with your family? Because you're busy all the time. I mean, can you tell anybody out there? I mean, because sometimes staffing's like 24/7. When do you turn it off, Ericka?
I have an expression. It's called always on. I don't
Love
know
it.
that you ever really turn it off, but I do sleep well other than last night. I'm a sleeper. I value my 8 hours of sleep. And I like to go to bed early. And I think early is the new late. And that's probably like this phase of life that I'm in. But I've always loved my sleep. I think that's really important. And, I don't know that balance is like the right word. I am a mom. I was kind of late to start a family. I have one son, Grant. And my husband has been a stay-at-home dad since Grant was born. So because of Jeff, who is the CEO, it's my other Jeff. I have a work husband, Jeff, and a real husband, Jeff.
There we go. Let's clarify that.
Last name starting with an H, so it sometimes gets confusing when you're texting. But Jeff Hyson is my husband. He is an amazing dad, and it's pretty awesome that he's been able to be home with my son since he was born. My son's now 14, so they have a really cool relationship, and it's such a fun example for my son to, see some of the shifts in the roles. Like I don't say that I don't know how to cook because I used to work in gourmet food, but I certainly know how to cook. But my husband he's the CEO of my household. He just does it all, and he loves to cook and take care of all the things. And that's it's a huge thing.
Oh.
I'm not in a situation, and I know a lot of the moms listening are in a different types of situation, right? Where they have to get other kinds of help. And, for the last 6 years, I've been in a city where I moved there. I didn't know anybody, we didn't have a babysitter, and we had a pandemic. So it was like, we were this little insular family, and it's been really good for us, just bring us closer, and it's been awesome. But sometimes you got to travel, and it's busy, right?
Yeah.
And, it's hard. There's a lot of pressure to do all the things for sure. I also have FOMO. Like I don't want to miss out on things, but
That's the same way with me too. I got to be everywhere.
and that's everywhere. I think it's just really, there's no like silver bullet. I think you have to learn boundaries, right? For the things that you want to cherish your time. And the same goes for your day at work, right? How do you want to spend your time? Who do you want to spend it with? Who are the people you want to surround yourself with, who give you energy instead of draining your energy? And sometimes you just have to say no to things. Even if you want to do them, you just, you can't do it all.
You can't. Okay. So your husband's famous dish, what is it? Since he's at home, come on, there's got to be a famous dish he makes.
Okay, well, we're back in North Carolina, so we did move back just this summer. And I will tell you, I've had a lot of barbecue. Eastern North Carolina style barbecue. He has more grills than anybody. He can make a lot of amazing things on the big green egg. His favorite to cook, I think, is barbecue, especially when I have people over. And barbecue is an event in Colorado. It's a thing you do. In North Carolina, it's something you eat.
Never knew that.
Pork barbecue, pulled pork with a vinegar sauce.
Oh, that'd be so good. Oh,
It's called a barbecue when you have people over to what we call cookout in North Carolina. So
seems like always in the North or Midwest, every time we have like a cookout, it's like an event. Down the South, it's like every day is a cookout.
yes, that's because we have beautiful weather.
I know. Rub it in. Rub it in here in Pittsburgh. Gray all the time.
Everything is very green and sunny today.
Oh my goodness. So final thing, and we're just going to wrap things up here. If anybody out there, I mean, your story is amazing here, and we can go on and on about this, but if you can inspire any women out there that are in staffing or leaders, what would you tell them? I mean, if they're like in a little bit of a rut now, maybe they're in the industry for 5 years, what kind of encouragement can you give them or leadership right now?
Well, I mean, I think everybody has their own dreams and goals, and if you don't, then spend some time with yourself thinking about it. I'll tell you my recipe for doing that really quick. I'm a big fan of goal setting. I took a lot of inspiration probably during the pandemic from my good friend Delibra Wesley, who runs a staffing company, and I really admire her around goal setting. So when you think about goals, it doesn't have to be like this year, but what I like to do is I like to think about a bigger, longer life cycle. And I think probably my experience losing Rob and my friend Norm a few years later of cancer kind of gave me this perspective. And so I ask myself this question: what do I want my life to look like at 90? 94 is the number I use because my grandma died at 94, and I want, like, she was at home, she was nimble, she was taking care of herself, and she died in her sleep. So, like, if I want to be Graham when I grow up, if that's like the 90, what do I want my life to be like at 80, 70, 60, 50, however old you are, you can kind of adjust. It can be challenging when you're young to think about what do I want my life to look like. But then you start asking yourself like really hard questions, like, okay, what do I need to do in order to get that life? What are some of the steps I could take and actions that I could take to get me from A to B? And that might require you to do some hard introspective, like a little SWOT analysis, like you would do at a company strategic plan. What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? What are the opportunities and what are the threats if I don't do these things? Right? You can apply the same principles in business that you do at your company on your strategic plan to have one for yourself. And so my book title is called Choose You, because really there is no one, even if you have all this love, and I had a lot of love and support, no one in your company, and sometimes not even in your own family, unfortunately.
Yeah, we know that.
Is going to advocate for you like you will for yourself. And so being really clear and honest with yourself about what's important to you, what your values are, where, how you're going to show up every day, who you're going to align yourself with, like, get really comfortable with that. And that can become your North Star for whatever happens situationally, right? Whether you feel stuck in your job, well, now you're going to feel unstuck because you're all motivated about your own plan. You just built for yourself. And then if you don't know what to do to stretch and flex a muscle, like, I'll pretend like I want to do headstands and learn yoga by the time I'm 94. Let's just pretend. I look at people like Steve Martin, he's an entertainer. He's an amazing actor. Look at his career. He's like pivoted to like go play the piano.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we have plenty of time to go learn how to do headstands, right? I just started this whole conversation and everyone thinks I'm a dinosaur, but I've got lots of time to do these things, I hope. So if I wanted to learn how to do headstands by the time I'm 94, I could have a plan to do that. I could probably be doing them by the time I'm 55 or not, I'll give myself a little bit.
Coming.
Right. So then you start shifting it to letting life happen to you, to being in the driver's seat for whatever it is. This is applicable. I actually really advise everyone when you're going through goal setting to pick a few lenses that are really important to you. So I have 4: personal, like for me, myself, like me time, my family. The third is friends and community. So I kind of lump my community service and giving back into my friendships, just because I wanted to have 4 buckets and not too many. And then the fourth is my career, right? And so you talked earlier about balance. Like if all 4 of those are not, if one's off, everything else is going to be off. Right. So what are the things I need to be doing to set myself up for whatever's next? Right. And it doesn't have to be that you've got it all figured out. You can pivot, you can change your plan. I mean, that's why what plans, and dream bigger than you thought you could.
Yeah, dream.
You know, and Joni Biley wrote a really great chapter about, her title in this book is called Dream Big. You know, just about goal setting and the importance of having goals. And, you know, if you look at any successful person, it's part of the habit. And then there's never a bad time, just like in your business. You don't have to do a strategic planning time out or session in December or August, or there's no right or wrong time to do it. It's always a good time to, you know, recalibrate and figure out what it is you want. And then if you don't know how to go get it, that's where pulling others in and sharing your goals with others becomes really important, right? Enlisting others to say, hey, I'd like to share my goals with you. By saying that you're doing it, you're also making them real because you're saying it out loud. You can, you know, post them on your desktop. You can do a virtual vision board. You can stick it in the front of your notebook. You can have it on your phone as a screenshot. But that kind of becomes your North Star. And if you're ever feeling lost, you kind of go back to that and be like, okay, what do I need to do to, because it's so different for each person.
Yes.
Not everybody wants to have the CEO job. Some people just want to like be great at the job they're in. And that's okay too. Not everybody needs to, you know, it's unique to each person. So I just encourage people to really listen to themselves and maybe talk to someone you trust and run it by them and get their feedback and help.
Man, do I love it. Hey, Ericka, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your story behind the scenes and everything like that. I mean, seriously, I learned so much more about you that I did not know. And that's
I can't wait to interview you. I'm like, I didn't get to ask you any questions.
This was all about you. You know that. How quiet was I? I'm like, I'm learning from, this is all about you. You know that.
I know.
This was your life.
So thank you for getting
Yes,
it all
I wanted
out.
to sit down and talk to you about everything that you've, and you've done it. I mean, amazing job here. I mean, on my end, I've only met you a couple of times, but I see all your content, everything out there. You're making an impact. You're somebody I look up to all the time. Seriously.
Well, likewise.
You are awesome. You hang with the boys, you can hang with the girls, you can hang with anybody. And I think that's the biggest thing we can learn at the end of the day. Adapt yourself to every situation. And you're a rock star for that.
Thank you. I just want to, if anybody's still listening, May 20th is Thrive Virtual, the American Staffing Association. It's a conference just really planned by women for women in the staffing industry. Men are welcome. It's very well attended. It will sell out. We have 1,000 seats total and registration is open. And then Thrive Live is October 5th and 6th, right before Staffing World. Tickets and registration will be open for that soon. That's in person. And if you're looking to say thank you to one of the amazing women on your team, what a great way to send them to a half-day conference with Thrive Live coming up. So I just encourage any listeners who want to hear some great speakers, connect with other women outside your company. The power of women when they come together is just magical. So I'd encourage anybody to participate.
I love that. And Ericka, everybody can reach you on LinkedIn if they want to chat with you offline or something like that, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. I love it. Thank you.
Well, hey, once again, thank you so much for sitting down with me. That's a wrap. We'll see you next time on another show. Cheers to Women's History Month. Love you all.
Thank you.